Good morning, y'all. Welcome to the Saints, the Standard of Truth Restored. It's a beautiful morning here in Nauvoo, Illinois. I am actually up bright and early this morning because I wanted to just do a quick video. So many beautiful things and neat things that we've seen so far. They actually closed all of Nauvoo yesterday for President Nelson's funeral without announcement, so that was a little crazy, but we still found some really fun things to do. This morning, I'm actually coming to you from the Hyrum Smith home. This is where Hyrum lived from 1840 to 1844 until his death at Carthage. We're going to be visiting Carthage later today. Just a quick view of the home here, you can see real quick. It's actually been updated, obviously, but the brick part is his home, original home. Really neat experiences here in Missouri and Illinois so far. We've been able to see so many amazing things. We saw far west. This is a really special feeling there where the temple site is. We saw Adam-ondi-Ahman, also a very special feeling. We were able to kneel as a family down in the grove right down by where they consider the amphitheater to be. Just a really beautiful experience as a family to kneel and pray. And it's been a few weeks, I know, since I did my last video. It's been a little crazy. There's just been so many things going on with just work and house and stuff like that we had to get done before we came on this trip. But then there was also some other things that happened. My good friend Ben Phelps and others were shot in that shooting in Michigan at that church. He was my best childhood friend, still is. I consider him my best childhood friend. We don't see each other or talk very much anymore because he lives so far away. But I would love if you guys would pray for Ben Phelps. If you could give him a prayer and his family. They're going through a lot right now. He has his up days and down days, but he was shot in the stomach. His little boy was shot in the arm. They're hopeful that he's going to recover, but it's going to be a long road to recovery. So any prayers on his behalf, I would greatly appreciate, and I know the family would as well. One of the things I want to talk about today is just how important it is to speak about truth. You know, a few months ago, I was faced with an ultimatum, whether I would take my videos down or whether I would leave them up and face church discipline, and had some miraculous experiences happen. But I feel like those walls have come down, those prison walls have come down. When Charlie Kirk got shot, and and it doesn't matter how you feel about what Charlie Kirk said or whatever, but he felt like he was speaking truth. And I also believe that, and you don't have to agree with everybody 100% of the time, which I obviously don't, but I do feel like Charlie Kirk spoke a lot of truth, and he talked about Jesus, and I truly feel like he was a martyr for Jesus. He always spoke about Jesus Christ, and he was silenced because people didn't agree with what he was saying. And I feel like I was being silenced for things that I was saying. You don't have to agree with me, and we can have an open conversation. We can have honest debate without being angry or violent or anything like that. We can have these conversations. Honestly, we can have these conversations about doctrines within the church and things that are said and done in the church without excommunication. I really feel like excommunication or disfellowship for just simply questioning doctrine. Remember from my first few episodes, it says I'd rather have questions that cannot be answered than answers that cannot be questioned. And I feel that way. I feel that so strong within me. If you go back and watch the episode about the ultimatum, I talked about how I was feeling like, am I Alma or am I Amulek? Am I supposed to stretch forth my hand and stop these people from literally like hiding and burning the records from Joseph, Hiram, Emma, and Lucy? Or am I supposed to be like Alma and just be like, the Spirit is constraining me to stop? And for a while, I do feel like the Spirit constrained me to stop. But eventually those prison walls fell. In that story, I told that to my mom when I was trying to decide what to do when faced with that ultimatum from our church leaders. And my mom was cleaning up the day after she had my nieces and nephews over, and she saw that a page had been ripped out of her Book of Mormon, and she wasn't thrilled about it. And it was actually the quad. It was the Bible, the Book of Mormon, Pearl of Great Price, and the Doctrine and Covenants. So it's a lot of pages, and of all the pages that could have got ripped out the day after we had that conversation, it was the story of Alma and Amulek, and the records and the people being burned right in front of their eyes. But when she texted me that page, she said, look what got, she meant to say ripped out of my Book of Mormon. Instead, she said, look what got rent out of my Book of Mormon. The more I've thought about this, I've really felt like, maybe I misinterpreted that story. Rent is a pretty important word to members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and also Mormons, whatever you want to call us, because rent is one of those words that is very closely associated to liberty and freedom. Captain Moroni, when he was fighting for their freedoms, for their country, people were having a hard time getting motivated to want to stand up for what they believed in. And so he took his coat and he ripped it and he put it on the top of a pole, and on it he wrote something. But he said that he rent his coat, and he put it on top of the pole, and he wrote, in memory of our God, our religion, our families, our children. I think that it is important to speak truth. Let the consequence follow. I love being a member of this church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I want to remain a member of that church. But I do feel like that we need to engage in open dialogue. I'm not alone. If you go back to my first episode, my very first episode or second episode, you can see how leaders of the church said it's okay to talk about things that happen in our church history, to talk about them, to discuss them. It's okay to talk about doctrines deeply, and I think that is really important that we do those kinds of things. If it's truth, it cannot be harmed by investigation. If it's true, it cannot be harmed by investigation. Do I realize that we need to be sensitive sometimes as we talk about these subjects? Yes, and I will try to be as sensitive as I can. But we need to talk about things like polygamy in the early church. Was it or was it not ordained of God? We need to talk about things like succession. Was Brigham Young the rightful successor? Those are questions we can talk about without having to get all worked up and how am I trying to say this? We can talk about these things without fear of losing our testimonies. Because what should our testimonies be rooted in? They should be rooted in Jesus Christ. There's a lot of other topics we could talk about too, and we might get to some other things, but those are pretty big and important topics. I'm grateful for the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I'm grateful for the prophet Joseph Smith, for Hiram, and for Emma. Yesterday, we were able to visit the graves of Joseph Smith, Hiram, and Emma. And it's interesting to me that on the Smith family farm, they're all buried right next to each other. Joseph, his one and only wife, Emma, and Hiram. Hopefully I can show you a few more little sights along the way today. and just show you some fun things out here in Nauvoo, some sacred things out here in Nauvoo. It's been a really good trip for us. We've definitely had the opportunity to feel the Spirit a few times out here while we've been here, and just testifying of the work that these men and women did and helped building the kingdom of God on the earth. And just reminds us of our duties, that we need to testify of Christ boldly, faithfully, and to testify against doctrines that have crept in that are not true. You know, Moroni and Nephi both talked about how they had seen our day and that we were doing things that we shouldn't be doing. And you know, those things, Moroni specifically says, I've seen your day and I know your doings. And if we've made mistakes in our church, it's okay. We can repent. We can strive to overcome those things and to build Zion, and we can build Zion in our own lives and our own families and within the church. So anyway, thanks for listening. I'm probably going to jump back on periodically throughout the day and just show you a few other things. Here what we have is called The Last Ride. This is Hiram and Joseph as they're depicted leaving Nauvoo to head to Carthage. Yeah, just a really awesome sculpture there in front of the Nauvoo temple. You can read the accounts from his mother and also others as he left, but his mother's is, Lucy Macksmith, is very tender. He said that he told her that he would likely die, and she fell on his neck and she kissed him over and over again, and she said it was the hardest trial that she ever had to bear. Just a really neat place to see. So here we are at Carthage Jail, and just on the pathway coming in, there's these different monuments that have different quotes from Joseph Smith, and I thought this one was very pertinent to this channel and the things that we talk about. But look what it says here. It says, I never feel to force my doctrine upon any person. I rejoice to see the prejudice give way to truth, and the traditions of men dispersed by pure principles of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Joseph Smith, Jr., 1844. Here's the gravestone for Joseph, Emma, and Hiram, buried right there together. I think it's really awesome that they are all buried right there, and there's such a special feeling that existed in that place. This plaque is right next to the graves of Joseph, Emma, and Hiram Smith, and it says the founder of the Restoration, his wife and his brother, possessed an enduring love and devotion towards each other. Joseph once described the bond between himself and Hiram as a love that is stronger than death. Joseph and Emma's marriage and family life were often tested by hardships and persecutions. Joseph was an affectionate husband and Emma's, quote, true and living friend, unquote. Joseph called Emma a beloved companion who was, quote, firm, unwavering, unchangeable, and affectionate, end quote. Both expressed joy in the unending quality of their love. It's interesting to me that those are the three that are buried together there in Nauvoo.
Hi, my name is Jamie Lynn Sharp. I'm Dave's wife, and we're here in Nauvoo, Illinois, visiting the whole historical sites that are offered here. And this is the Red Brick Store. Down below, as you guys can imagine, they sold dry goods, and up above, it's the place where they held meetings. One thing that's super important in the Red Brick Store is that they organized the Relief Society here in 1842.
In the April 1844 General Conference of the Church, Hiram Smith stood and gave a speech here just below the temple and a little west, somewhere near here in a grove of trees just like this that they used for meetings. In this meeting, he stood and he gave one of the strongest sermons that he had ever given on polygamy and condemned it completely. About 20 minutes outside of Nauvoo is this little place called Morley Settlement. There's no buildings there anymore, but this is a place where my fifth great grandfather lived for a little while. His name was Edmund Durfee, and
This settlement was quite a booming little settlement, had over 120 homes, but the mobs came in and burned the homes down and forced most of them into Nauvoo. My fifth great grandfather went into Nauvoo, but he came back at harvest time, and he was staying with a friend while he was harvesting the crops, and somebody had lit fire to the hay. They went out to fight it, and he was shot and killed, leaving a wife and 13 children behind.
Hey, so we are here in Hannibal, Missouri. This is the childhood home of Mark Twain. He later came back here to write about his childhood experiences and turn them into novels that many of the American people love today. One of the books that he wrote, however, is called Roughing It, where he traveled out west and he actually interviewed Brigham Young. And this is what he said after his interview with Brigham Young. Polygamy is a recent feature in the Mormon religion and was added by Brigham Young after Joseph Smith's death. Before that, it was regarded as an abomination. This verse from the Mormon Bible, or the Book of Mormon, occurs in Jacob chapter 2. For behold, thus saith the Lord, this people begin to wax in iniquity. They understand not the scriptures and excuse themselves in committing whoredoms because of the things which were written concerning David and Solomon his son. Behold, David and Solomon truly had many wives and concubines, which thing was abominable before me, saith the Lord. Wherefore, thus saith the Lord, I have led this people forth out of the land of Jerusalem by the power of mine arm, that I might raise up unto me a righteous branch from the fruit of the loins of Joseph. Wherefore I, the Lord God, will not suffer that this people shall do like unto them of old. So even Mark Twain, after his interview with Brigham Young, believed that Joseph Smith was not the author of Mormon polygamy.
Here's the grounds that were dedicated in Independence, Missouri, where the temple is to be built in the center of the city of Zion. I don't know what it was about Far West, but this is the Far West temple site, and it was amazing. There was such a spirit about this place. My wife and I and kids just really loved it there. What a fantastic place. And the cornerstones that Joseph Smith laid for that temple are still there. A really neat place. As I've talked about in previous videos, there were some skirmishes and fights going on between mobs and Missouri militia and the Mormon militia. And this is the eminence, or the place where Joseph Smith surrendered. And he was taken into custody and then transported to Richmond. You can actually see, as this picture fades, a little hill behind this sign, and that is actually where the unfinished temple in Far West was. This is a statue of Alexander Donovan. Alexander Donovan was really a crucial character in this story. When Joseph Smith and others were taken into custody at Far West, General Lucas held them before a military court. However, Joseph Smith was not in his military, so he couldn't hold a court-martial. Yet, he illegally commanded Donovan to execute the men. And Donovan refused. And he said that him and his brigade were going to be marching for liberty in the morning. And that if General Lucas executed these men, Donovan said, I will hold you responsible before an earthly tribunal, so help me God. And so General Lucas did not go through with the execution and instead transported them to Independence and then to a little cabin in Richmond where they were chained together, him and 6 other men that I've talked about in other videos. In this picture, you can see a little white fence surrounding a lot where a little log cabin used to stand in Richmond, Missouri. And it's where Joseph and 6 other men were held and bound in chains. And Alexander McCrae, Lyman White, and Joseph and Parley P. Pratt all gave their accounts of what happened that night. The one that we hear the most is from Parley P. Pratt, where the men, the guards had become drunk. They were saying just the most vile things and talking about the things they'd done to the women and children in places like Hans Mill and other places. And Joseph stood to his feet in chains, and he said, "Silence, ye fiends of the infernal pit. In the name of Jesus Christ, I rebuke you and command you to be still, or you or I die this instant." The guards all, according to all three records, the guards became silent. Some of them even begged Joseph's pardon. Pretty neat experience that happened there. While we were in Richmond, Missouri, we were able to visit a few of the cemeteries there. The Whitmer family, most of them are buried there, which is pretty neat. But David Whitmer and also Oliver Cowdery, 2 of the 3 witnesses to the Book of Mormon, are buried there. Interestingly enough, though, this headstone is the biggest headstone in that cemetery, and it is from Arthur King. Now, Arthur King he became the governor, but at the time he was the judge that kind of ruled in the case in Richmond. And because of him, he put charges of treason and other charges against Joseph and Hyrum. And so then they were transported to Liberty, where they remained for 4 months. It's interesting to me to see the symbol on Arthur King's headstone, the Masonic symbols there. Secret combinations at its finest. One of my favorite things there in Richmond, Missouri, though, was this sign that I came across marking the grave of Mary Whitmer. Mary had a story that I'd never really heard before, and I read it. You guys can pause the video and read it on this plaque. But she was shown the gold plates by the angel Moroni. Her son actually said it was Nephi, so there's a couple conflicting things. Now, these stories did come later after she had died, but her son testified that she had actually seen an angel and that the plates were shown to her. Now, for whatever reason, when I was in Richmond, this kind of blew me away because I wasn't prepared. When I just was reading it, I had no idea about the story, and the Spirit was so strong, and I felt it all the way through my body. My sister felt it. I got Jamie out of the car. I'm like, hey, you got to read this. And she felt it. Pretty amazing thing there. This is the replica of the Liberty Jail. That actually is the same floor. They did keep the floor of the basement intact. So that is the floor where Joseph and Hyrum spent almost 5 months of their life in a very cold, dark prison in Liberty, Missouri. This is also where some of the most amazing sections of the Doctrine and Covenants, in my opinion, were written and came from. This is a picture of me and my beautiful wife here at the Valley of Adam-ondi-Ahman, where Adam, the Ancient of Days, will come to a meeting prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ, and the righteous posterity will all meet there, and the prophets that have gone before. Really neat, beautiful spot, strong spirit there. This is where we were able to go down into a grove of actually walnut and pecan trees and be able to pray as a family. A really neat experience there in Adam-ondi-Ahman. Driving by the Missouri River here. So now you can kind of get a glance at how big that river actually is. And Joseph, when he was in Liberty Jail, he wrote a letter to the saints. And part of that letter, he said, "As well might man stretch forth his puny arm to stop the Missouri River in its decreed course, and to turn it upstream, as to hinder the Almighty from pouring down knowledge upon the heads of the Latter-day Saints." And we see that happening. People thirst for knowledge, they're able to have it. Stretching forth their puny hand. I like that. Stretch forth their puny hand. There's no way you can stop that Missouri River and turn it upstream. All right, so we finally made it back home to Idaho. Well worth the trip. Anybody living in Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, it's definitely worth the drive to head out there to Nauvoo and Missouri and see some of those historical sites. Really want to drive home. It's funny how we're all on the same page, but Karen Hyatt, she said the same thing. As well might man stretch forth his puny arm. So go watch her latest video, Karen Hyatt, on YouTube. Knowledge is coming, and I so much appreciate the people who are working on the Joseph Smith papers to make those documents available to us and the truth that we're finding in those. I'm so grateful for people who are dedicating their lives to podcasts, to research, to help us to understand the gospel and the truths that are found in there, things that we haven't known. People are trying to conceal it, trying to stop it. Learning about our history is not a bad thing, and trying to understand the truth about our history and the truth about what real doctrine is. I believe that one man should have one wife. There's other things that I want to talk about in the future, but I have been trying to drive that home. I disavow polygamy completely. I think it's a false doctrine. I think that according to Joseph Smith and Hiram and Emma, he never once said that polygamy was of God, nor do I believe he practiced it. Anyway, people are going to stretch forth their puny arms and try to stop that from coming out, but it is coming. I'm so grateful for that. Anyway, I'm going to do 2 more videos here pretty soon. A little bit more lengthy one on the Voice of Innocence from Nauvoo, and also the speech that Hiram gave in the Grove at the General Conference in Nauvoo of 1844.